Entrepreneurs, I am hyped to deliver this episode today. Wes and I connected sometime last year through cold networking, social media, trying to grow our businesses. He's in the mental health realm and he's doing so much. I'm excited to share the business side of his operations with you all today. He has a lot of stories, a lot of lessons learned to share with everyone. He started something from nothing. He's got takeaways on everything from starting your idea, starting your business, to now scaling it across the country and internationally. When he is not speaking, he's the founder and chief storyteller of The Hidden Company, a mental health holding company housing impactful brands with the mission of revolutionizing the mental health conversation. You may recognize him from writing with authors, as he is the author of I Have Anxiety, So What? Similar to me, he travels to see students. I love what he's up to, and he's just getting started, which is even cooler. He has an impactful story headed your way. And as we have a mental health entrepreneur on the show this week for our spotlight story, halfway through the show, we're going to look at an Entrepreneur magazine article called 5 Ways to Protect Your Mental Health. As an entrepreneur out there, everyone knows who's listening, we have to take care of our mental health when we overload ourselves. Wes is going to help us with that and so much more. Well, let's get started here, Wes. Why did you become an entrepreneur? Share your story.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back with you. I know this is another time when we can come together and talk about something very important, entrepreneurship. So my story really does start when I was like a kid. I think I've always been entrepreneurial. I grew up in a kind of suburban neighborhood where I kind of was the only person of color. So I kind of felt too white for the Black kids and too Black for the white kids. And it was like this weird dynamic. On top of all that, I also have a laundry list of allergies. And this is a very important story. So I'm allergic to like peanuts, I'm allergic to like chocolate, I'm allergic to like all these different things. So I would be like a kid going to all these birthday parties, and like these kids would give out goodie bags filled with chocolate, right? So I personally couldn't eat the candy in the goodie bag. So I just had a bunch of like chocolate stashed up. So what I would do is with that chocolate that would be stashed up, I had a box of 100 pieces. I would go door to door in my neighborhood selling chocolate, right? So that was like the earliest hustle I can remember of me being entrepreneurial. Then on top of that, I stole my brother's Pokemon cards, brought them to school, sell to my friends for money. I was that kid selling bubblegum and candy. Like I was doing all these hustles. I didn't know what I was doing until the big show Shark Tank came out. And there was like this word for like what I was doing. Like there was, you're an entrepreneur. I'm like, what the heck is that? You know what I mean? And then when someone explained it to me, I was like, oh, that's why I do all this stuff naturally. That's why I'm selling candy and Pokemon cards. So I really have been on this journey of using business. And the reason why I go back to my beginning story is because, looking back in therapy, I've now been able to learn that I used business and entrepreneurship to make friends, right? Because I was very isolated. I felt very alone. So I really used business to make friends. Most importantly, on the bigger picture, I used entrepreneurship to help other people, right? I was always fulfilling a need. And today, when I have my mental health holding company that houses my production company that is responsible for me traveling the country and speaking, and also houses my lifestyle brand, I really want to help people and impact them in a very positive way.
This segment is sponsored by Bedrock Business Builders, a small business startup specialist. Start, build, manage.
And you're definitely doing that already. I can't wait to see what's next from you. And I love the early childhood signs of entrepreneurship for me, shoveling the show, raking the leaves in the neighborhood, going door to door as well. Thank you for kicking us off, Wes. Then everyone listening on, welcome back to That Entrepreneur Show. Here we are for another episode. I'm excited to bring another founder of a company your way for some new stories, lessons learned, and everything in between. For everyone who is new to us, welcome. This is the show where I sit down with founders from across the world to share their stories of entrepreneurship, ways to help you on your journey, and just let you take that deep breath when times get tough. Because entrepreneurship, the highs are high and the lows are low. But Wes, before we dive into all things entrepreneurship, where can everybody find you online and all the other things that you're doing?
Yeah, you can follow me. You can find me personally at Wes Woodson. That's spelled WesWoodson on anything on any platform. And you can also follow my company at The Hidden Co. So that's spelled TheHiddenCo on any platform. I'd recommend actually following us on Instagram because we're going to be doing an amazing string of giveaways in the next few weeks leading up to our first drop of the year, actually. So, yeah.
Love that. Thank you for sharing. So there'll be an IG giveaway coming soon. I want to start off the show right away, Wes, but helping everybody who's tuning in with us today. What is one of those greatest lessons learned in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, for me, it's really this idea of comparison, right? And to compare yourself to yourself. I think it's so often that like entrepreneurship is a very lonely experience. If you don't have a co-founder, you don't have a team, you are kind of doing everything yourself. And it's easy when that anxiety and that stress kind of comes up that you want to, take your eyes off the prize and look at what other people are doing. And what I really knew, or I really have known throughout my entrepreneurial journey is I would do just that. I would compare my business and where it was to a friends of mine. Like I went to a school where it was the number one entrepreneurship school in the world, right? So I went to college, Babson College, and basically I had friends who had multi-million-dollar companies at the age of like 18. So I'm sitting here like, yo, what am I doing? Like, I had friends go on Shark Tank and get deals from Mark Cuban. And I'm like, what am I doing in my company? Right. And what it taught me is you can't compare your chapter one to someone else's chapter 24. Right. Because there's so many lessons in that. Because my chapter one is I'm just starting. I might be starting out printing out t-shirts and hoodies, but then, in 3 years, I can be traveling the country and speaking, right? Which I am now. So my business has changed compared to another company doing something entirely different, right? But what I also realized too about this idea of comparison in entrepreneurship, we compare ourselves to other people, right? But we don't even know the price that they paid to get that thing that we're so admirable about or we're so jealous of. So that person has a multi-million-dollar business. Maybe they don't have the best friendships. Maybe they don't have a good home life. Maybe they don't have a good balance of life at all. Maybe they have terrible mental health, right? So I don't know that. And the thing is, if I really wanted that, what they have, I can't just pick and choose their life. You know what I mean? I had to take everything. So on that note, that's why I think one of the greatest lessons I've experienced is comparison in entrepreneurship. Because when you compare yourself, you start to really hate where you are and you don't give yourself credit, and then you take your eyes off the prize and the main mission.
You said that very well. There are many sectors of your life, many areas where if you're winning at one area, you may not be winning at all the other areas, relationships, professional life, personal life, hobbies. So you see, like you said, you have to take the whole package.
Yeah.
And you have to really just be grateful, I think, for what you have on your journey. Some things you may not want, some things may not be working out the way that you would hope so yet. But there's a lot of work to do, and we can always self-improve. Wes is a great example of that. Just shared how his business has transformed. Everyone out there, you never know. The sky's the limit. If you work hard, things can continue to unravel for you. But along the journey with lessons learned, there are some challenging parts of being an entrepreneur. What are some of the hardest parts for you, Wes?
100%. For me, the hardest part, and this is going to be interesting. For me, the hardest part is describing what I do, right? Because I think for me, and similar to you, we do many different things, right? That all fall under the same mission. So if my mission is to make mental health and make the mental health conversation less scary, less daunting, and really fight to break that stigma, I really take a holistic approach, right? So the biggest challenge for me is when I get in the back of an Uber and I'm driving somewhere and the Uber driver asks me, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, oh, I don't know how to, properly explain it. And that might be strange for other people to hear because, I think when people think entrepreneurship, they're like, wait, your biggest challenge is describing what you do. I thought it would be wearing multiple hats or traveling or sleepless nights. And quite frankly, those are hard things too. But that's where the passion comes in, right? That's where I'm
Sure.
like, I love doing those things. I just told you before you started recording, I was up until 1 p.m. No, sorry, 2 in the morning last night designing all of our upcoming merchandise next month. Like I love that. And my girlfriend and my parents, my family think I'm a little far gone for that. But like that's where that passion comes in. So those things traditionally and stereotypically are challenging. But the biggest challenge for me is like, how can I actually explain what I do to other people and make it impactful and relatable and actually make it that they can actually see themselves in the grand mission, right?
Great advice right there. Always working on your elevator pitch. You have to always narrow it down because you never know who that next conversation is going to be with. Yeah, Wes, I could certainly relate working these crazy hour days. Not many people can understand. Only entrepreneurs can really relate to that, where my weekends are my most productive days, really, because there's no distractions. There's nothing going on. I can work really 12, 14 hours straight through. And I don't feel like I'm working because I enjoy it. I love everything I'm doing, similar to you.
Exactly. I love it. I'm the same way. I think I've now learned too, this other lesson that is the intersection of mental health and entrepreneurship. I have learned to work in sprints, not necessarily like this grand, like because life is a marathon, right? And I think I would always kind of just run all the time. But what I do is I do it in bursts. So I'll have like maybe 4 to 5 hours of very intense focused work. And then the other hours I take a break. You know what I mean? I go for a walk. My girlfriend and I, we have a pool table in our apartment. We compete in pool and we go play pool sometimes, or I literally go to the gym and I do all these things that kind of help me get this kind of sense of self-love, right? Because ultimately, and I've never actually said this publicly, but I came to this realization about a week ago, going back to my first point of how to explain what I'm doing. I have always seen how physical health has gotten so much attention from like companies to movements to TV shows, bringing attention to like new companies skyrocketing during the pandemic, like Peloton. They're not doing so well right now, but Peloton, really kind of putting physical fitness on this top tier level. And for me, I want to build the Nike of mental health and self-love. That's what I want to do. And frankly, this mission is going to take a lot. It's gonna be a lot of sleepless nights. But going back to what you said, that's where the passion comes in, right? That's where you can't lose sight of what the main mission is.
And with mental health, I like to put it like this: often, when in comparison to physical health, you break your hand, you rest a month, you get better. You're not doing well upstairs, excuse me. What if you rest and do the right things, get some sunlight, some exercise, some good nutrition? It may not be a lifelong disparity. It may be something you move past, but because of the stigma surrounding mental health, often people don't heal properly, quickly, when they should.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
it's been a lights out episode here, Wes. I think it's a great time now to head into that spotlight story. We have an awesome article from Entrepreneur Online. I'm going to go over some of it. We're going to get Wes's take on it. It's called 5 Ways to Protect Your Mental Health. And it starts right out: entrepreneurs, there's a key to success that you may not be prioritizing your mental health. And I think even what Wes just said with breaks, if you're out there and you read Mr. Lancy Talks Mental Health, you know that my areas I speak about are taking breaks throughout the day, taking one mental health day per week. You have to do these things, even no matter if you're overloaded or have so much work to do. When you take that break, you come back stronger than ever. And that happens for me every single time. But the life of an entrepreneur is taxing in every way imaginable. Challenges are not lacking between raising capital and consistent income, establishing a brand and a web presence, building a dependable team. You name it, there's so much to do. And mental health is easily one of the most underrated and overlooked keys to entrepreneurial success. A study out of UC Berkeley says a whopping 72% of entrepreneurs have some kind of mental health issue. That's 72%. On the entrepreneurs they studied, 30% had depression, 19 had ADHD, 12 had substance abuse issues, and 11% had bipolar disorder. Mental health is finally getting attention, and that's good news because you are not alone. This area talks about 5 areas: support, professional support, daily practice, outsourcing, and radical self-acceptance. I'm going to go over a few, then I'm going to bring Wes back on here. Number 1 was support, so I think we have to start there. It is an important factor to your mental and emotional health. It has a secondary effect on your physical health as well. As we can all experience, lack of social support is linked to depression, and loneliness has been shown to alter the function of our brains, leading to issues like cardiovascular disease, depression, increased alcohol use, and increased suicide rates. Social support can be challenging during a global pandemic, but there are creative ways to stay connected. Of course, social media and Zoom are key factors. Daily practice. Entrepreneurs can find time to develop a daily practice for the benefit of themselves and their business, similar to what we were just talking about, taking breaks. These practices can include meditation, gratitude, breath work, yoga, or even going for a walk. Daily practice is simply something you decide to do for yourself and is a non-negotiable. We have to hold ourselves accountable out there. And the last one I'll touch on is outsourcing, which is this context is not about sending manufacturing to another country. Rather, it's about looking at your life and finding things that are taking up mental space and depleting energy, and then finding someone else to handle that. As entrepreneurs, we wear so many hats, and it can be a real challenge for us to relinquish some of that responsibility and control to someone else. We've all been there. Wes, what are some of your takeaways from this write-up?
Yeah, so I think I actually have read the same article because of that statistic of 72% of entrepreneurs that have a mental health challenge. It sticks out to me.
Yeah.
I think it's I love how the article is written, and I love how entrepreneurship is getting a lot more spotlight to it in a different light, right? Because we used to praise like hustle culture, we used to praise pulling all-nighters, and now you see the Gary V's of the world and the upper echelon entrepreneurs of our time talk about this message of mindfulness and gratitude and all of these things to kind of combat all those years of them promoting this unhealthy, toxic lifestyle of hustle culture. So for me, that article is wonderful because it's really, like I said, showing entrepreneurship in a different light. I think we praise something so much that sometimes we don't see the other side of the coin, right? We don't see the sleepless nights. We don't, and we might say that we do, like, oh yeah, of course I'm a pull all nighter to design this website to launch tomorrow. But like we don't see how that really impacts the mind, right? How that's going to actually impact like us long term. Specifically though, with the takeaways, I would add another one, and it kind of goes similar to taking a break. But I have a colleague of mine who I speak on the road with a lot. His name is John Battleman. He's a licensed therapist, and he's basically this older guy, very very cool dude. But he actually schedules in his day worry time. Like he schedules a time in his day where he looks at his calendar, and during those like 45 to an hour time frame, he literally schedules all the things that he's worried about. So he just it's a kind of, I guess you can call it a kind of meditation, but it's really so cool for entrepreneurs because we have so many worries. Like, am I gonna make enough money next month? Like, is this merchandise that I just ordered from the factory, is it gonna come in on time so I can make my deadline? And how am I going to afford or hire my photographer? Are they going to show up on time? Like all these different worries that hit our head every single day. What am I going to do about taxes? Oh my gosh, I gotta call the state, and I gotta literally have this whole debacle, this whole conversation about refiling my paperwork, my business, like all these different stresses. And it's kind of like people don't also understand too. And forgive me for going on a whole rant because it's so important.
Good, keep going.
People don't understand too how the difference between stress and anxiety, right? Like stress is kind of like that reaction, or that how do I say it? Stress is that reaction that we kind of have to an external thing, right? So that could be that deadline, that could be us really kind of worried about all these external factors of our business. But anxiety is our body's response to that stress. How do we manage that stress level? So for me, whenever I get really stressed out, my anxiety turns into, not being able to sit still and pacing back and forth. My anxiety turns into not being able to eat because I'm so worried about what's going to happen tomorrow, right? It's a future oriented emotion. So I think as entrepreneurs who are kind of always living in the future, right? We're always thinking ahead. We're always thinking, 10 moves ahead like it's chess. It's so important to bring that perspective back into the present. And I think how we do that is through those things that you listed, have 5 ways to protect your mental health, but like also to really trying to acknowledge what are we worried about? Because I think as entrepreneurs, it happens so fast and we're moving all the time that we don't even acknowledge how we really feel.
Too many great points there, Wes. Thank you. One I want to touch on is the worry time, sort of like his meditation. And I love how you brought that up because I've read a little about this and it's come up from time to time where even going to the gym, when I'm there for 45 minutes to an hour, I'm in a meditative state where I'm just locked in. And it's true. I find that to be my meditation. I'm someone who has a tough time sitting there for 20 minutes to meditate. It's just not for me. The great thing about mental health is there are a lot of ways to improve it, which is one of the main missions with my books, to provide as many tools as possible, because one may be for you. What works for some does not work for everyone. And for me, that exercise is my meditation. I also thought meditation was some kind of miracle drug, and I've touched on this before, where you meditate, poof, it's a magic potion, you're feeling all good. But it is something for me that allows me to recognize that I can separate from certain thoughts I don't want to have, and different ways of doing that. Thank you, Wes. Right back to you, though. Best piece of advice you were ever given. Help out our audience.
To just start.
Yeah.
I think when you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to go out on your own and build something, whether that's a product or a company of any kind, we get in our heads too much, right? We think it has to be perfect. It has to have all the bells and whistles and the perfect wrappings. But perfection doesn't exist. And I remember I heard a metaphor that's a great way of explaining entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is, or being an entrepreneur, which means it. Also, I want to be clear. Entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily mean you're starting a business, right? It's a mindset that you have to be a strategic and creative problem solver. So for me, in the arena of starting a business, I would say the metaphor applies of jumping out of a building, like a I don't know, 1,000-foot tall building, and you're jumping out and you're building the airplane as you're falling. So what that means is you got to take that jump. You got to take that leap. It's going to be scary at first. You're going to be failing. You're going to be falling rapidly, but you're building the thing as you go, right? Because if I told you 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when I first started my company, and what it is now, like, no, like I wouldn't have been able to conceptualize it if I had just waited at that line where I was trying to think, all right, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. I used to be like that. I used to be that kid who was trying to strategize like what this should be, and I would be so obsessed with the details that it would lead to inaction, right? And nothing would be made, nothing would get put out. And frankly, now my goals have shifted to really trying to not be perfect, but to make progress, right? So the way I make progress is by showing up every single day and trying my best to serve my community, right? So and that's what I'm really trying to do, to build my community, to leverage my community, to build other wonderful things that could help more people. So if you'd like to join that community, again, I'm gonna throw a shameless plug. Follow me at Wes Woodson, or follow the company at The Hidden Co. On Instagram and all social media platforms, because we're doing something great. I think we're doing something way wonderful, and I'd love to have you a part of it.
Be sure to scroll down that episode description to click that follow button, look at his website a little more in depth. It is a lot of valuable content there, and I can certainly relate to the progress rather than the perfection. My first book, Left for Dead, my longest book by far, 50,000 words, at one point like 70,000 words. And every time you read that book, I'm changing synonyms. I'm moving one sentence around. I'm putting so much pressure to release this perfect product. Have 5, 10 spell checkers, proofreaders on this book. So I'm so scared I don't want to make a mistake. But then you realize some of these bestsellers do have a comma missing here and there, all these things. You have to be light on yourself. You have to, no matter how many times you write a book, you can always change the way a sentence sounds. You're in your own head so much. So you have to just let it go to the world. It's good. Strive for a great product, not a perfect product. I love that.
100%.
And
And
it killed me. Yeah.
it's so true, so true. But I'm so glad you realize that as well. And you inspired me too. You inspired me. So I'd rather you mention that the book, because when I wrote my book too, it was all about that too. It was all about being perfect. And when you realize when you're putting together a book of thousands of words, you're like, oh, I want it to be so perfect. But then perfection doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
It's just a mindset that isn't really one for me. The perfection mindset isn't one for me. I tried it, wasn't for me. In life and entrepreneurship, especially, we have to quote unquote fail to learn the lesson the best way. Books do a lot. I'm a career student for sure, but there's nothing like that firsthand trial and error. But trial and error, you find things that work for you, things that don't work for you. What is one resource you have found to work for you, whether it be a book, a workshop, tool, app, something you can recommend to our community of entrepreneurs to help them on their journey?
See, people won't, they might not like this answer. It's a controversial answer. It's an answer that people will disagree with right off the bat. They might turn off the show right now. Honestly, if I'm being honest. But something that has worked for me, a resource that has worked for me and being the best entrepreneur I could be, is taking a break. It's stopping.
Yes, sir.
It's stopping, because I think it's easy to be so overwhelmed and overconsumed that you get. It's great to have tunnel vision sometimes. Don't get me wrong. Like it's wonderful to have tunnel vision. It's wonderful to be having a singular focus. But if you don't have that recharge time, right, the time away to get the bigger picture, right? I took a whole month off of doing any work. Like I logged off of everything. I deleted social media. I wasn't touring. I wasn't speaking. I wasn't selling any merchandise. I took a matter of fact, with the merchandise side of my business, I have taken a whole year off. I have not released.
I did that too. My merch too. Yeah.
Exactly. I stopped it. I stopped it because it was like, all right, I don't think I understand what's going on. I don't think I'm too focused. And now we're just getting back to it a year later. But I haven't released a single thing. I have people like ask me for like stuff like here and there, and I'll do it. But no, and I had a brief blimp where I tried to get back into it, but I still wasn't ready yet. Like I still wasn't, it didn't feel right. So I was okay with pressing pause. And I think as entrepreneurs, we got to normalize pressing pause. So that's my biggest resource. It's not a book, it's not a website, it's not even an investor. It is really investing in my own sanity. So that's what it is.
And that just comes with recognizing yourself, recognizing your body, know when you need to take a break. And that also with entrepreneurship, one of the hardest things is that comparison syndrome where someone else is chapter 5, someone else is chapter 10. This all comes hand in hand. It all comes together to just be in your own lane. In one affects the other. Make the strides in one area, it will overlap and lead to more success and happiness. But before we sign off, and this is one question that has survived all the talking point changes and updates, because of time reasons, I've thought of taking it out, but I have a lot of fun with it. If you could choose to have a conversation and learn from any entrepreneur, dead or alive, throughout history, who are you sitting down with, Wes?
Whoa, that's a deep question. That's a really, really deep question. That's hard, I should say. There's like two of them.
Let's hear them.
There's two of them. And they're very interesting. So one I'm gonna say off the bat is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is, I think people think, I mean, he was not the best person to work with, right, or work for. But he was a visionary, right? I think the way he thought about giving people products that they didn't even know they needed was so wonderful, so impactful. So I would interview him for marketing, right?
Okay.
The other person who I would love to sit down with, and people, whenever I say this answer, people are always like, oh, of course you're gonna say him. I mean, he's not even an entrepreneur. But hear me out for a second. Is Dr. Martin Luther King. So yeah, like whenever people are like, oh, because like you're black and he's black, it's not even about that. It's about the idea that this man, right, he had the ability to bring thousands, if not millions of people, but rally them behind a singular cause without Instagram, without Facebook, without email. So how do you do that? How do you take a message and inspire millions of people to rally behind that thing without any form of technology that we use today.
Well, he's
right?
definitely the founder of a brand. It is a brand. It is not.
It's our brand, right?
Every single celebrity, even, or public figure, someone speaker, advocate, someone improving justices. You are to represent you, me. We are the face of our brand. That's a great one. All right, so let's delve real quick before we sign off a little deeper. Where are you sitting down with Martin Luther King?
So where am I sitting down? Oh, that's a good question. I would just like to sit down. Dang. So my favorite place, my favorite restaurant is the Cheesecake Factory. But I wouldn't do that because I think if I sit down at Cheesecake Factory and Martin Luther King, people are gonna flood the table. So I would actually just have it in my apartment. I would sit down face to face with them and have a very closed off conversation, right? And just sit there and just really marinate on what he would tell me.
All right, there he is, Wes Woodson. It's a name you will continue to hear for many years to come. He's on his way. So much accomplished and so much still to go. Where can everybody find everything you're working on? One more time, Wes. Website, social media, all things Wes Woodson.
Let's do it. You can find me all things Wes Woodson. You can find all those things at my website, www.weswoodson.com. That's spelled WESWOODSON.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Wes Woodson, my name. You can follow the company, the company that we're building. We're building the Nike of mental health on at The Hidden Co. We're doing a wonderful giveaway. We have our first drop of the year. Like I said, we took a whole break from merchandise, but now we're diving back into it. That's coming out a month from now. And I cannot wait to have you a part of it. Also, I forgot to even mention, I wrote a book called I Have Anxiety, So What? Normalizes the conversation around mental health, specifically around anxiety and depression, where I share my personal story. Find that at Barnes & Noble's, Amazon, all these different things. It's great. I'm excited. So I'd love to have you part of our community. We're building a robust community where we're trying to break the stigma together. So thank you for having me on your show. I hope all y'all stay well. And I know you can't see my face, but I'm smiling. I hope you are too.
Be sure to check out his content. And I am at Vincent A. Lancey on all social media. YouTube is Vincent A. Lancey. Be sure to check that out. You can see Wes's video interview on Writing with Authors with that book. I Have Anxiety, So What? And you can also scroll down in the episode description for his mental health break episodes. Be sure to check us out at That Entrepreneur Show as well, although I have been condensing to one platform, Vincent A. Lancey. Until next Friday, I hope you all have a great week ahead. Wes, you're awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you.